Hello and welcome to Cherry Red TV and AFC Wimbledon TV. I'm Iain McNay, and today in the studio we've got Ivor Heller.
Hello, Ian.
And of course, Ivor is commercial director of AFC Wimbledon, also a member of the Dons Trust board, and he was instrumental in helping to start the Dons Trust and also AFC Wimbledon. And we're going to talk about Ivor's history to an extent, find out more about Ivor as a person, and of course his dealings with the club over the years and what he's learned. So Ivor, let's start when you were quite small.
Oh, voice is small, Ian. Sorry.
Were you good at football at school?
Yeah, I could play a bit. I knew my, by quite an early age, I knew my options were going to be limited because at the end of the day, I knew I'd get above my mother in height, who's 4'11".
Yeah.
And my father was a massive 5'2". Therefore, it was likely I was going to be somewhere in the middle, which is exactly what happened. And therefore, the smallest player ever to play in the Premier League was 5'4". So, or in the first division even, that was Brian Flynn, along with Billy Bremner. I realised I was going to be substantially shorter than those guys, and I was never going to be a professional footballer. But I could play, yeah. I played in the school team and so on. And
but were you dreaming when you were a kid, very young? That you
absolutely,
wanted to be a
100%, yeah, very much, yeah. I had a fair amount of skill and could control the ball quite nicely, and yeah. People said that if I grew, I'd stand a chance. But the big if was I knew I wasn't going to really, and it never bothered me particularly. But that's probably the only effect being a short ass has ever had in my life. That I knew I could never be a professional footballer.
Right.
Not that I would have been. You never know. If I'd have grown, who knows?
And what position did you play football?
Oh, I was more of a right-sided, an inside right, I think is the right way to put it. But
it's an old-fashioned term.
Yeah,
isn't it?
an old-fashioned inside
Yeah.
right. But I could play up and down the park. I had quite a good engine on me, and there's another pun, isn't there? But I would go up and down and get stuck in, and I was an aggressive little footballer.
So when you say you got stuck in, you were a bit dirty, were you?
Hard, I would like to think of
Committed.
putting it. Yeah, committed, fully committed.
Yeah.
Yes, totally
Yeah.
committed. Yeah. Didn't take any prisoners.
Okay. And were you quite smart at school in terms of academic
Um, I,
achievements?
I think I could have been, but I wasn't. No, I didn't enjoy being told to sit still in class. I didn't really understand what an awful lot that I was supposed to have been learning. I was going to bring into my later life, and therefore preferred playing snooker and watching football to going to school.
Right. And were you popular? I imagine you'd be very popular at school. 'Cause
Yeah, I think I was quite popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was always a laugh and a joke around the corner, and I've managed to get away with that with a lot of the teachers. They always seem to be giving me a chance and so on, and they probably shouldn't have done really, but that was me. It was I had a very fun childhood. I never stopped having
so it
fun.
was a happy childhood.
Oh God, yeah. No, tremendous fun from and all my life's been tremendous fun, really. Although you have hard times and easy times in our business life and personal lives and everything. But generally, I always come out of it trying to have some fun.
That's a good attitude.
It's an important one to me.
Yeah. So I'm just going to follow this line of your height or lack of height, if you like, just to try and investigate this more. So, as you know, I know you as the character that on the face of it, people make jokes about your height and there'll be the little chant of "stand up, Ivor," because you're already standing up. But that must have been quite hard when you were younger, wasn't it?
No, I never really found it a problem. Up to about the age of 11, I suffered with some bullying at school. That was over religious things as well as being a short ass. Where I grew up in Malden was very far from a multicultural society. Very far from a multicultural society, which you wouldn't recognise it now. It's changed on that front dramatically. But there were. It was not a place that was used to having immigrants or anything like that, and my family are Jewish, although I don't practice any kind of religion whatsoever. It still marked me out as being different, and I had my problems. There are a lot of ignorant people. My favourite one, and the one that makes me smile still to this day, was one particularly thick idiot came up to me and said, "If you're a Jew, were you born in Jerusalem?" It still makes me laugh. I think about that on a regular basis, and I just think you're really sick and stupid and ignorant, and that kind of said it all about where I grew up. So I had a double whammy. I had being a short ass and I was different. And
Yes.
by the age of, it was somewhere around when I was about 11, I learned to stick up for myself. And I did that in quite spectacular fashion, and I've never looked back since. And that was probably, I would say, one of the most important parts of my development as a human being, was the fact that I realised I wasn't going to get any help from anybody. The teachers and the school weren't really interested, and I did something about it, and that changed my life.
It's an important thing, is it, to make a stand and show people that you...
Sometimes you have to,
Yeah.
and eventually you have to, and I think that's reflected throughout my life ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never really looked back, I don't think.
It must have helped you build your strength in a way. Realise you do something that is very firm, and people respond to that, and they kind of respect you somehow.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's a terrible thing in as a child that to get respect you have to do something a bit outrageous. But it absolutely was the way it was. That's
Yeah.
what happened. There's no ifs or buts about it, and I look back on it and I shudder, because it wasn't pleasant at the time, but it taught me an awful lot. And and if I've got something to say to somebody, I'll say it.
Yeah. That's how I know you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You and I have disagreed in the past, and that's great, because it's never been nasty. But I've said what I've thought, you've said what you've thought, and that is the way it should always be. We should always have the courage of our convictions to say what we want to say and do what we want to do. As long as you're not hurting anybody, why not?
So, football-wise, was Wimbledon the first club you went to see play, or did you go somewhere else first?
The very first game of football I went to see, the very first game, was actually Sutton United versus Chelsea. That was with that Chelsea team that had won the FA Cup.
It's a friendly, presumably.
It was a friendly, yeah. It was a friendly, and I don't know why, but my father decided to take me and my brother to a football match, and we went to that, and I remember it being very busy and not being able to see a lot, and came away from it thinking I enjoyed watching football, but there was, I was very young. I didn't feel any affiliation. My first Wimbledon trip, if I guess that's what you're going to go on to next, was brought about by someone that's still around at the club, and actually involved in non-league football. Is a guy called John Wilkins, who was a referee, or is a referee now. He wasn't then. He used to coach around the parks and the recs in Malden, and he was a big Wimbledon fan. And he had scrapbooks with cuttings about what Wimbledon were doing and Wimbledon Football Club, and he used to take some of us to games, and that was how I went to my first couple of games. And it was John Wilkins that took me, and he's still around. He had a column in a non-league paper not long ago. He's an interesting character, John, and I'm very grateful to him. And that was it. The first time I set foot in Plough Lane, it was love at first sight, and that was it. I never looked back. There was never another team for me. Never thought of another team.
So, what did you like about Plough Lane?
But the smell was the thing that really got me. And I'm not talking about the toilets here. I'm talking. You could smell the liniment. You could smell the Bovril, the tea bars. There was just something that was right about it. The lights, you could see the lights from a fair way away at Plough Lane, and the whole atmosphere of walking along Hayden's Road from the train station, and you're seeing the crowd gradually build, although it wasn't always a massive crowd in those days. It was just, I can't explain it. I've never known anything else like that in my life. It just bit me, and that was it. Plough Lane was home. Never.
So you've never known anything like that in your life before?
No,
That's
never.
a big statement to make.
No, never. It was an instantaneous bug that I knew was never ever going to go away. I automatically knew that it was quite strange, but it felt like that right from the beginning. Yeah, the fact my brother was there, my older brother was with us, and he got bitten by it too, and that might have been it. That my elder brother, who you obviously always look up to your elder brother, although my brother, I'm sure, will watch this and won't believe that I'm actually saying this, but I looked up to him then, still do. He's the tallest one in the family. I think he could have been a Premier League player because I think he just about made 5'4", but he's going backwards now. Yeah, so he seemed to be quite bitten, and I tagged on with that, which is, I think that quite
And your
happens.
first game, you're not actually sure, are you?
I'm sure it was Guildford and Dorking,
Okay.
but we can't find a record of that game, so maybe it was Dorking, maybe it was Guildford, but I remember quite clearly that it was Guildford and Dorking. I'm sure it was the Southern League Cup, and I'm sure we won 2-0, and it was pouring with rain, but it was a long time ago. I was 7 or 8 years old, probably 8, I think. The memory plays tricks, doesn't it? But it was definitely. I remember Tommy McCready playing for Wimbledon, and he left in 70. He left before Alan Batsford took over.
Right.
So it may have been his last season. It may have been 2 seasons before he left. I don't know.
It's great you remember him, and now, of course, Tommy Creedy comes to virtually all our games.
Yes, I promised to never ever call him Eddie McCready again. By the way, because it was because of Eddie McCready who was a Chelsea player. They were the first. I went to that Sutton Chelsea game, and I don't know if Eddie McCready was even playing from then. But anyway, I always got him muddled up with Eddie McCready.
Yeah. And so I understand you had a season ticket. Your first season ticket was the season 74-75.
Yeah. The school were given. I don't know how many season tickets. They were like orange passes, and my sports teacher knew that I liked Wimbledon, and he just gave me a shout. So, would you like a season ticket? And I'm like, well, yeah, thank you very much. I'd love it. Then I went back to obviously to my parents, and I was like 10 years old. And it was decided that I could go to games with my brother. And because it was get on the train at St Helier station, which was right opposite where I lived, and then it was only 5 stops to Hayden's Road. Eventually it was, in those days you could go to games on your own, and I met some of my still friends at football in those very early years, standing at the front of the West Bank, and then graduating to the back of the West Bank where I was an expert at looking between the shoulders. It was amazing. It was amazing how much of the games I used to see. And jumping up and down and making idiots of ourselves. And years later, we still do the same thing, except we sit down now.
So that 74-75 season was quite a season, wasn't it?
I think that most, when you talk to lots of people that have followed football all their lives, the years they really remember are really between 10 and, well, maybe some of them 9 and 15. They're the years when it's just so full on. Your brains are growing and you're taking in information, and I can pretty much name all of the team from the 74-75 year. I can remember games like they were yesterday. It's still very crystal
So what was your
clear.
favourite game from that season?
Oh,
If you had to choose one.
I think that it's really difficult, because most would say the replay at Sellers Park against Leeds.
So we should explain for people that aren't necessarily that
Yeah.
much expert on the history of Wimbledon FC. That was the season Wimbledon won the Southern League, didn't
Yeah.
they? After going through quite a difficult period. They also got to the 4th round of the FA Cup,
Yeah.
having beaten Burnley, who were then in the old First Division,
Yeah.
away from home 1-0.
Yeah.
They then went to Leeds in the 4th round, drew 0-0, and then lost the replay at Selhurst Park.
That's right, 1-0.
Yeah.
To me, I think the most exciting game that season for me was Bath City in the first round of the FA Cup. Bath City in the first round of the FA Cup.
It's the first round proper.
First round proper,
Yeah.
yeah. We were. It was an amazing day. The Wimbledon game was the only game on in London that day. Everywhere else had been rained off. It was how they got Plough Lane, how they got the game on. God alone knows. It was very muddy. The ball was sticking and everything, but they got the game on. There were fans from all over the place had come
About
to the game.
7,500 there for that, I think it was.
Well, I think the official crowd they gave out was just over 5,
Was it?
actually,
Yeah.
but there were loads more than that in
Yeah.
that ground. It was really busy, and I think that used to happen an awful lot at Wimbledon, where crowds weren't completely accurate. But there were Bristol Rovers fans there, Fulham fans, there were Palace fans there. There were, there was real excitement in the air. There were a couple of punch-ups. It was just a crazy, crazy day, and there was just something in the air that I can't really explain it. But when Mick Mahon scored that goal in the last minute of the game, games didn't have as much injury time in those days, and you never knew. I never knew how long there was to go, but you could tell that there were people about that were like, oh well, this is a draw. We've got to go to Bath on Tuesday, and we won't win down there. They were a good side, Bath. And Mick Mahon scored that absolute wonder goal, and I think, to this day, that was the platform for the Wimbledon story.
Mm.
That's always been my belief, that if Mick Mahon hadn't have scored that goal, the likelihood is that the Wimbledon story may well not have happened.
Well, that's an incredible statement to make. So you're saying that one moment, that
one
one
moment,
goal,
yeah.
built Wimbledon FC from a relatively obscure Southern League club to become eventually a Premier League club and win the FA Cup.
Yeah, I do.
It was that moment.
Yeah, that moment did it. What it really did.
So take us through it. Take us through that goal. What you remember?
Oh, I mean, I just remember Mick Mahon getting the ball out on the wing, cutting in and smacking it, and it just flew in. That was it. And then everyone erupted. And then he blew the final whistle, and it was like, oh, now we're in the second round of the FA Cup. And in those days, the draw was a big thing. Much more so than it is now.
I remember this very well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I can remember having to go to school on the Monday, and all I could think about was the draw.
About 1 o'clock, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it's either at 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock.
Yeah,
I can't remember
you got the
entirely.
radio out in the school playground.
Yeah. It was that kind of thing, and finding out information about Wimbledon when we played away, we used to have to wait for the London Evening News to come in to try and get the results. Yeah. Then they weren't always there, so you had to wait till the next morning to buy the newspapers, and sometimes they weren't even in there, so it could be really difficult to find out. Information wasn't as free flowing as it is now, but that draw, we got Kettering at home, and Kettering at home was a real sticky one because them and Nuneaton were the other really good sides in our league, and you could see it was pretty much a three-way battle at the top of the league, and it was like Kettering at home. Ooh, I suppose it's better than playing a league club at home. I suppose it's better than playing a league club away. Yeah. In fact, we can beat Kettering, and then when it came down to the game, it was again a super crowd in that day. I think that actually officially went over 6,000, but again, that's claptrap. And we beat them 2-0, and it was a doddle. And then the third round, and the excitement started to really build. Now, Burnley away, again, with the lack of coverage that we got, there was no live TV. And we knew there'd be a snippet on television. It would be mentioned on Grandstand and ITV's World of Sport. So I had a radio set up and I had a television on, and I wasn't allowed to go to the Burnley game, which I suppose is understandable. I was 11 years old, and I dare say if Dad didn't have to work in the shop on a Saturday, he may well have decided to go to that because everyone was quite excited. But and the word around the school playground was we were going to get thumped. The excitement levels were... I noticed a difference, whereas I used to get taken a pee out of by quite a few Chelsea fans. Our school was full of Chelsea fans, and even Palace fans, and they'd all kind of say, oh yeah, Wimbledon, that's not a proper team, so on and so on. But I noticed that around that game there wasn't as much of it as there had been, because all of a sudden there was more news about Wimbledon in the newspapers than there was about Chelsea, who, no one gave a damn about them at that time. And
the extraordinary thing was that was a big story, and yet it didn't get a big coverage before the match, did it?
No.
And nowadays, if you had like a third division, third round of the FA Cup, a club from the, a big club from the Premier League, which is the equivalent league now that Burnley were in, playing a non-league club, that would be a huge story.
As Burnley as not only were they a first division club, they were in fifth position in the division when we played them, and the bit that it is incredible. I mean, as a kid, I was obviously convinced we were going to go up there and win. There was never any doubt in my mind that we would beat Burnley. But that was a kid's thing.
No, but let's look at this, because one of the things that you've always had for me is this eternal optimism, and it's not always a spin kind of unrealistic. You really mean it. You really feel it.
Yeah, well,
That's part of your appeal, I think.
there's an interesting thing there. People keep turning around to me and saying, I'm amazed at the club's progress. You could never have expected this. And it's like, well, actually, sorry, but maybe we might be a year early, but no more than a year early. No more than a year. And actually, this, a lot of what we put in place at the start of AFC Wimbledon has come to fruition now. And some of that, I don't mind going into that in a minute. But we've got to finish Burnley first, because that gets my juices flowing.
I want to pick this up, that even at that time, 10 years old, 11 years old, you knew we would win, and in a way, and you really felt we would win.
Oh yeah, but I believe that's a kid's thing.
Okay.
I do believe that was a kid's thing, as opposed to my great football knowledge, because I don't believe I've got a hugely fantastic football knowledge. I just felt that as a kid, we could go and beat anyone, because I thought that my then boyhood heroes, Dickie Guy, Ian Cook, Alan Batsford, I'm the luckiest man alive. I get to mix with those guys now. They were my boyhood heroes, big time as well. Believe me. And I thought they were invincible. We'd been on this fantastic winning run. We hadn't lost for God knows how long. Well, not since the opening day of the season. If I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that. We hadn't lost since the opening day of the season. We lost 2-0 to Nuneaton, I think it was. And then we went on this fantastic run after that. And so why should we all of a sudden go and lose a game? It was fairly obvious we weren't going to me. And when we won at Burnley, and there was quite a hoo-ha. It became, all of a sudden, it was like, you could tell that the Match of the Day team were like, why didn't we have that as one of the main games? And they rushed Dickie down to the studios, and there was just this fantastic, it was like, that's Dickie Guy, that's who I sit behind. I stand behind him when he's in goal for I'm up the West Bank and Dickie's there, and he was waves at the crowd, and we had our silly songs for people and everything, and it was just... it was amazing. To me, the biggest factor of the lot is that it hadn't happened for 65 years. And it hasn't happened since. And I read articles in the NLP about great giant killers, and non-league giant killers, this, that, and that. There's no greater giant killer than what Wimbledon have done, in my opinion. The Hereford thing was magnificent, and I loved the footage of watching that. It was great. Nobody ever knew how popular the Parker was until you watched that footage of Hereford winning that game and all the green Parkers coming on. It's brilliant. It's a fond memory. But what we did at Burnley was more historic, and it's something that Wimbledon Football Club, because of our later achievements, I don't think get the full acclaim that they deserve for that. And it's something that does slightly wind me up, I must be honest. Obviously then we were going to go to Leeds, and I must admit that even my optimism was failing at that point. I didn't believe that we could genuinely beat Leeds, certainly not at Leeds. 6 months earlier they'd been in the European Cup final. Or was it 6 months later? I can't remember which way round that was, but Leeds were generally reckoned to be one of the best teams in Europe, if not the best team in Europe. And how could a part-time team with a bank manager for a captain and a builder for a goalie, even though they were gods to me, you got Peter Lorre with the hardest shot in the world and all this thing, and the excitement over that Leeds game was so immense. And although I got very upset about not being able to go to Kings Lynn the year before in the FA Cup first round, the Leeds game was horrific for me not to be able to go to the Leeds game. But I suppose it's about time I said that my parents were right on this one. They were probably wise not to let me go to the Leeds game. Leeds United wasn't a very friendly place to go to, which I found out later on when I did go there. Wasn't very friendly. So, that Leeds game, on the day of it, if I remember correctly, I had a TV set up, 2 radios tuned into 2 different stations. I had banners on the walls. I had my famous top hat on that was signed by all the players, and numerous bought scarves and homemade scarves and God knows what else. I looked like a Wimbledon Christmas tree. It was amazing. Just listening to everything and taking it all in, and there were constant reports on the game this time because all of a sudden we were the giant killers. This was the biggest giant killing it could have possibly have been. If we were to get something at Leeds, it would have been a miracle. And wallop, it happened. We got the 0-0 draw. Dickie saved that penalty. Scuff shot, Dickie. I know you'll watch this. And it was just incredible. Absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
The next day down at Plough Lane when they started selling the tickets for the replay was incredible. Absolutely incredible. I got my ticket. I think I was up at 6 o'clock in the morning and down there, and again the recollection of a kid then. It felt like the queue was a mile long. It was probably only 100 yards, but it felt like a mile long. The game sold out, and then it rained, and it rained, and it rained, and it rained, and it was heartbreaking that game didn't get played at Plough Lane.
Selhurst,
And again, when the game was played at Selhurst, now all the kids at school, it was a different kettle of ball games. All of a sudden, there were other kids turning up wearing Wimbledon scarves, wanting Wimbledon to win. I mean, the whole of London turned up for that game.
46,000 people.
46,000 people, but there were football fans from every club were represented there, and everybody had a mutual dislike of Leeds and wanted us to beat them. And that was fairly obvious, and we put up a damn fine show that night. Absolutely unbelievable. I do believe I was the first person in the ground. I was right behind the goal.
So you got your position.
Got my position, and it was wonderful. The whole thing was just amazing, and I could just about see over there because it was dropped down at Selhurst. So I was my head was really at pitch level. So you saw that goal go in. That was sickening. Still see, I replayed that one for a very long time, but you couldn't not be absolutely 100% proud of the team. They did us fantastic, amazing stuff. And then to go on and win the Southern League that year, the London Senior Cup, that was a great day out at Dulwich's old ground at Champion Hill, that was a very special day out, the one against Leatherhead, who were the other big giant killers that year.
So I get the feeling talking to you, it was like you'd found an alternative family at Wimbledon.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
You felt at home there.
Yeah.
And you obviously made lots of friends there.
Yep. To me, as I was quite a mischievous kid, one way and another, and it was somewhere where I could kind of misbehave, and which I did.
How were you mischievous?
Oh, I was always mischievous. Yeah, my parents will tell you that any time there was anything, the phone rang late at night, anything, it was always that's Ivor. Whenever. Once or twice the police arrived at the door, they knew it wasn't my brother, they knew it was me.
So what had you done then for the police to
always
arrive?
something or other, a motorbike accident that I was in, and, I think it only happened a couple of times, but I think I was lucky it didn't happen more, to be honest. I was just mischievous. I used to love doing things that were mischievous.
So you actually had a motorbike, did you?
No, I was on the back of my friend's
Okay.
motorbike, and he decided not to see a car, he didn't do it on purpose, of course, but I took flying lessons over the top, and that really put pay to my football career because I smashed my knee up, and I get a lot of jip from that now. So if you're watching, Alan, it was I was a bit of a handful, I think, is the best way to put it.
So when you left school, what did you do? What kind of job did you do?
I got a Saturday job, which was a bit awkward for me, being a football fanatic. But I needed to earn my own money, so I went to work at Caters in Malden, and I was very fortunate that very soon after starting, the bread strike was on.
Okay.
And again, I probably wasn't the best of people to work in somewhere like a store, because there was lots of mischief you could get up to in a store, and at 14, 15 years old I really was mischievous, and this was like a giant playground to me, and getting paid for being there. It was an invitation for trouble. But the one thing that had happened was I'd had to miss a couple of games, and I couldn't see how I could carry on doing what I was doing, working Thursday night, Friday night and Saturday, missing games was killing me.
Yeah.
So almost as a punishment for being not stacking the shelves right, or whatever it was that I wasn't doing properly, I was told that on that Saturday I would have to go in the bakery, and and I was like, fine. And they said, oh really? You've got to be there at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, fine, I don't care. What time do I finish? Oh, you finish at 2 o'clock. And I'm like, oh, hang on. That means
You can make it.
I can make it.
Yeah.
I can make the game. I think it was against Rochdale or someone exciting like that. And so I went in the bakery, and I worked with a guy who was exceptionally hardworking, and and I actually got a buzz out of creating something. You'd put flour, water, yeast, bit of salt, all together, and then you'd turn out something that actually looked quite nice and people liked. And I got,
And hopefully it tasted quite nice. As
oh,
well.
yeah, certainly. And I got a bit of a buzz out of that.
Yeah.
And I got a buzz out of trying to do it quickly and work with this guy who was like, all he was bothered about really was finishing on time.
Yeah.
With it being the bread strike, that we were inundated. The queues started very early, and people couldn't survive without bread in those days. It's sort of, that's how it seemed anyway, because the way we worked for a few weeks, and that became a serious option for me. And that was how I started my professional life. I started out as a baker and then a cake maker, patissier, and so on, and loved doing that. And what it meant was I would make even some far northern trips by starting work at 2 o'clock in the morning, being finished in time to go and get the coach from Plough Lane to go to some very far-flung places.
That's a commitment to start work at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, but I've always been a bit of a night person, and I used to do it. My parents, would tell you that they're still amazed to this day how quiet I used to be in the mornings, and I used to try and start. The earlier I could start, the more time I had to do what I wanted to do myself. So I was a reasonable snooker player and stuff like that, and that was all because I could start work in the morning and go and do what I wanted to do in the afternoons and the evenings. And I when I was younger, I didn't need as much sleep as other people. And that's changed a bit now, I can tell you. But I used to be able to go weeks on end with only getting 4 or 5 hours sleep a night. And that's what I used to do, and then I'd crash for a night and go to bed early and get up.
And can you still do that?
No, not as much. No. It took till about 30, till I was about 32 to really realise that I couldn't do exactly what I used to do. But I still used to go out all night every now and again and go to work the next day.
And have you always maintained this incredible bubbliness and energy that you have?
But I think so. Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
a natural thing that's always been with you.
Yeah. I've never. I mean, once or twice, I think in my life I've been a bit down and I've had to cover it up a little bit. And the way I cover it up is by being bubbly. But generally, I like to get on with things and just try and have fun out of everything. Even the bad situations can turn into something good, can't they? You just have to be like
with the football side.
Absolutely, yeah.
So. Let's just, we won't spend too long on these intervening years before AFC Wimbledon. Let's have sort of a brief look at the main highlights there. Obviously, the FA Cup final, which we all kind of know about, and getting in the Premier League was an incredible thing. What stands out that wouldn't be an obvious thing from those years when we were in the Premier League?
Okay, that's interesting. I think the thing that really stands out for me and I mean, the loss of Plough Lane is the biggest thing to me.
Yes.
And hypothetical questions are all well and good, and you can't prove a hypothetical question. But if you were to say to me, "Let's take away the FA Cup win, but you'd still be at Plough Lane," I'd take away the FA Cup win. Without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
Because possibly even getting into the first division, because that's what set Plough Lane onto the road to disaster. It gave the council a reason to lift that covenant, albeit in pretty shoddy circumstances, one way and another. And the history that's gone on from that is just absolutely shocking. And we've been very lucky, I think, very lucky, as well as we've worked very hard to create what we've got now. But when you go back through those years, like you can trace certain things that goal against Bath City. I still firmly believe led to the lifting of that covenant and so on and so on. And it's a whole series of events that had to fall into the right place. They did. I think Sam Aman was born lucky. I really do. I think he got lucky when he appointed.
Did you have much contact with Sam? One-to-one contact?
Latterly, yeah, quite a bit, yeah.
How did you find him?
I found him cowardly, to be honest with you. He used to run away when he was cornered, and I'm not at all worried about that going on film. Sam, there are lots of people out there in football now that think that we owe everything to Sam. I think we owe him absolutely nothing. I really do. The one thing, when I think about Sam, I get quite angry quite quickly. But when he talks about family, he talked about us as his family all the time. The one thing that I know for certain is, whether you want to or not, and I certainly don't want to, by the way, for any of my family that are watching this, you can never change your family.
Yeah.
You can't. And that is it, full stop. So using a word like that, as liberal as he did, whatever culture he comes from, however easily it is to discard family in the Lebanon or wherever it is that Sam is now, or where he came from or whatever, you can't do that. And he did. And at the end of the day, he's got his millions out of it. I won't say good luck to him, because I don't wish him good luck.
When Wimbledon moved from Prowl Lane to Selhurst Park, you stopped going for a time, didn't you?
I did, yes. It hit me incredibly hard. 2 days before it was finally announced, Claire and I, my now wife, we moved into Leopold Avenue, which is walking distance from the ground, and we had a garage and an extra car parking space negotiated, because I thought our friends could park there and then we could go to football all together. And it was almost it's a lovely part of Wimbledon, but it was in walking distance of the ground, and I had many a good Saturday planned, and midweek games, and all these plans were being made for this wonderfully social time that it would have been, with people coming to us for lunch and then go to the game, or whatever we were going to do. And then when we moved to Selhurst, it just broke my heart, really. It really did. There wasn't the connection between groups of fans that there are now.
No, I understand.
And I think Sam was very clever the way that he did it. Whilst I don't like what Sam did, he's a very worthy adversary. He was a tough nut, Sam. It was just horrendous. It was just like something was ripped away from me, and I certainly had no desire whatsoever to go to Selhurst Park to see Wimbledon play.
So what did you do on Saturday afternoon?
I moped around first of all, and then I've always been into my snooker, racing, stuff like that, and I started to do that on a Saturday.
So you didn't watch football at all for?
No, I stopped going. I wouldn't go to the away games. I just felt that it was.
That was a huge part of your life.
Well, what I actually thought was that they were trying to destroy the club. That's what I felt from those early days. I felt that this is all a plan to destroy the club. They're only interested in selling off Plough Lane, and once they've managed to do that, they'll just wrap the club up, and that is the end of it. And in those days, there wasn't the fans groups that there are now for people to really fight things. I know there were valiant efforts by lots of people to try and do stuff to stop things happening and so on, but the internet certainly wasn't around first of all, and I had no way of keeping in touch with people.
So how long did you stop going for?
This one's confined to memory, but I think it was about 4 or 5 seasons. It's about 4 or 5 seasons.
And so what triggered the change?
Okay, the only thing that triggered the change was I was still going to a couple of games, away games, really. One of them was at Arsenal. I had a business contact, a very dear friend, who I'd gone to, used to take me to Highbury, and I used to take him to Plough Lane. When we played Arsenal, and they were big days out, very big days out, very drunken days out, And when we played Arsenal, he still insisted that I went. And I used to go and I'd enjoy myself. And he had the most fantastic seats. He had 4 seats at the front of the West Stand in the exec suite. It's an amazing place to go and watch football. If anyone ever went there, they'll know what I mean. Amazing. And I got to know all these people over the years there. And they used to give me a lot of stick, and I'd give them a lot of stick back. And of course, we didn't lose there for a long time.
10 years.
And I used to really, really enjoy them. They were fantastic days out, and I got treated like a king whenever we went there, and it was great. And every time when the fixture list came out, Ken would ring me up and say, "Ivor, are you going to take us to watch Wimbledon at Wimbledon this year? Yeah, or at Selhurst?" And I'm like, no. I can't go there. I won't go there. And then in the end, he went on, and I was sorely missing it. I used to get upset every time I drove past Plough Lane. My factory was just down the road, and it was really starting to get to me by then. So I decided to phone the club and reciprocate for Ken and a few others. I wanted to see if there was a hospitality package I could buy, and lo and behold, it was Sharon Soletto answered the phone.
Sure.
And it was like, "Oh, hello, Ivor. Haven't heard from you for a long time." And I'm like, "What?" That's Sharon who used to be in the shop. And it was just like really weird. It was really weird, and it was just, oh, right, okay. Yeah, I want to book some tickets for us. Yeah, of course, no problem. So we booked the meal and we did everything, and along I went with Ken and a few others, and we sat in the restaurant there, and one by one I saw more and more people that I recognised and people that I knew, and some people I hadn't seen for a very long time. Getting towards kick-off, and by now we'd had a few bottles of wine, and the drink was flowing, and all of a sudden there was a tap, tap, tap on the window, and I look up, and there was Mark Jones and his brother Paul. I think Steve Elson was with him as well. And they were tapping on the window and making very rude gestures at me, because I hadn't seen anybody for a long time, which was amazing, really, because we were all mates, and it just didn't seem right that we'd been smashed up like that. But still, that's the way it was. And all of a sudden I thought, oh, hang on a minute, people are still here. It's still the same people here, and that was it. I was back.
Yeah.
And
then you got involved with the Vice President's Club, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, things had changed for me a bit then. I realised, but my first experience at Selhurst was this corporate entertaining thing, and I realised that it was actually a really powerful tool for me business wise, and that was the way I decided it was going to go. I didn't particularly want to go and sit in the stadium. I didn't really feel comfortable there, but I thought that if I do it properly, and use it for business as well as my own pleasure, I thought that having a vice president's ticket would be a good idea.
Yeah.
And it was. It worked brilliantly.
And you ran the Vice President's Club,
Well,
didn't
no,
you?
I mean, not to start with, no. But in the last, I think it was the last 2 seasons, I actually became chair of the vice presidents. But in all honesty, that was in my opinion, a fairly redundant body. I think it had been populated before by people that will want to be directors that never got there. They tried a group of them, and I'm sure that they were all very well meaning. They tried to get the club off of Sam a couple of times. There were all sorts of other things that had gone on, but basically, they very few of them joined in the fight. Tom Adam was in there, and he's still on the Dons Trust board today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can remember talking to Tom about the trust and dragging him along and getting him involved. But it was a difficult battle in that lounge to get people to realise, and quite frankly, most of them weren't real Wimbledon fans. That's the truth of it.
I was in that lounge the last season at Selhurst Park. I'd been in the director's box before that, but I joined the Vice President's Lounge, and I could also see that it was more of a corporate thing than a real committee. There were some committee fans, but it's mainly a corporate entertainment
Yeah, well,
thing.
I mean, from what I can remember, and what I think is there were only probably 5 or 6 out of what must have been 70 or 80 people that are actually with AFC Wimbledon. I know a couple of them went off to Chelsea straight away. Crawley and other clubs kind of benefit Fulham. Fulham have got a few. Which tells me that
it's not in their blood, is it?
No, it's not in their blood, and some of those people were after cheap corporate tickets because it was much cheaper corporately at Wimbledon than it was anywhere else.
So let's look at the whole story of AFC Wimbledon. Obviously, the stories are very well known. I think we don't have to go into the details of what happened, but let's look at your role and how strongly you felt about it. I remember the first time I saw you was, I forget which match it was. We talked about this at the Isle of Man last week, but you were standing next to where the Norwegians were sitting, and who was the guy, the South African guy? I forget his name now.
Well, you got Koppel and Hauger.
Koppel, that's right, yeah. And you were standing and you were berating them, shouting at them through the whole match.
Yes.
So there you must have felt pretty kind of committed to go for that, because you didn't look at the match once. I think you were just shouting at these guys.
That was the back to turn your back on the game. And that was really the last game where we followed the club that I did that. Although I'd had several altercations with them before that. As far as Koppel was concerned, I had a particular loathing for him. That was really not just his ideas that caused that, but the year before, in the vice presidents, he tried to get me to be his friend, his mouthpiece. I was going to be the one that was going to win the fans over, that sort of thing. I could get, talk about future being on the board and stuff like that, and I'm like, you've got to be crazy. You have to be mental if you think that I'm ever going to jump into bed with you. I mean, I got to say this to him, and I was very lucky that I got to say it to him. Yeah. If you think I'm going to jump into bed with you and help take this club to Milton Keynes or anywhere else that you want, you've got another thing coming. In fact, stand by the blasting, you've got a fight coming. And that particular side of it is, apart from, I can be a little bit tempestuous from time to time, but that really fired me up above and beyond.
What kind of response did you get from the fans around you when you were just standing up and shouting the whole match?
Well, that game,
which game was it? Do you remember which game it was?
It was the game where we all turned our back on it. It was against Barnsley. I'm pretty sure it was Barnsley. The reaction was amazing. I got a lot of support. There were a lot of people that were backing me up. But it's not easy for everybody to stand there and confront people. It's not easy for someone to just do that. And I was quite emotional, but at the same time, I'd spent the whole season demonstrating. We'd lay down in front of coaches and stop coaches going. I was regularly the last one at Sellers Park, waiting for the last dregs of people to come out, particularly from the Vice President's Lounge. And I remember talking to Tom, long after the game, Tom Adam, about getting involved with the trust and so on, and I'm fairly sure that was instrumental in getting him involved, which proved to be a very good move for the trust and the club as it is now. But I was always one of those that was prepared to go to the extremes. When other people, after maybe having 1,000 people stay behind banging seats, there always has to be a last person left at the demo. Invariably, that was myself, Tudor Jennings, and Cho and Debbie were very often the last 4 people standing on the picket line as such. And getting wet, freezing cold, whatever it was, we always did it. So that day, I thought, was our last chance to really do something. I made it my mission that year, after spending thousands and thousands of pounds on tickets for years at Wimbledon Football Club, and some extremely large amounts of money that I probably shouldn't have done, but I did. I decided that year to spend as little as I possibly could. So I was getting players' tickets, because I knew quite a few of the players. They were giving me their tickets and so on. And I've gone from spending thousands a year before to virtually zero that season, and I'd got tickets in that part of the stand, and there were a whole group of people wearing our t-shirts, back to Plough, turn your back on the game, or back to Plough Lane t-shirts, and because we were right by the director's box, I took my opportunity to harangue them.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did. And I was
They
threatened
didn't know
with
how
being.
to take it, really.
I was being threatened with being arrested.
Yeah.
At which point I told them to go ahead, feel free, arrest me. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not swearing. I'm not threatening. And I wasn't. I was just making my point, and continually making my point without a response, which is cowardly. They never ever had the guts to truly engage with people. They'd do it with a load of security men and a microphone, but they wouldn't actually engage with people because they had an unwinnable argument. There is no way you could justify what happened with Wimbledon Football Club going to Milton Keynes. I don't believe there's anybody who can genuinely justify that it was right. They could pretend, they can make up their own version of it, but I don't know anyone that has managed to make me think they were right. They weren't.
It's just brought back a memory for me at the end of that game. I haven't thought of this for a long time because I've been talking to Coppell earlier, telling him I felt about everything, and they cleared that stand. They didn't clear me out for some reason, maybe because they saw me talking to Coppell earlier, and so I watched what happened because there was a demonstration behind the goal. People stayed in there, and Coppell was standing just in an entrance, and two security guys held a mirror so Coppell could see what was happening in the demonstration. Without showing himself.
Yeah, well, we refused to move.
Strange guy.
We refused to move from where we were.
Yeah, they cleared the whole stand.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's just where.
I mean, I was described. Just. I know we need to move on from this, but with Ronan Wald, him and I were invited to take part in a sponsorship group. I think it was when we played Watford in a midweek game, and as we walked into the ground, one of my fondest memories of the whole thing was. What was the actual word that they used? The agitators or the not insurgents? That would be wrong, wouldn't it? The agitators, the aggressors, or a word like that came over the radio. The security men's radio have entered the stadium, and we were the activists. I think it actually was the word. The activists have entered the stadium, and everywhere we went, there were security men watching us as if we were going to do something ridiculous.
No, they were frightened. Yeah.
Oh, well, they were mental because that's the one thing. It stood us in great stead that since those demonstrations were held peacefully, everything we've done with Wimbledon has been done properly, and that has stood us in great stead because there's no other football club that would have happened like that. I don't believe it would have happened. I believe there would have been. There would have been violence and bigger problems with any other club that they tried to do that with.
I think you're right. One thing I want to pick up on, which I wanted to ask you about, you were saying how you knew quite a few of the players in those days. How did you feel much difference in the attitude towards the club and the fans that the players had at those times as opposed to when you first started to go?
No, it's really strange there's a certain group out that have always been about at Wimbledon that have had a them and us type thing with the players, but the players very much felt at ease with the fans, and very much loved the fans, and appreciated the support that they got. I think they all knew they were at a special club. They knew that there was a special spirit at the club, and I don't think that that's ever really disappeared. They wanted to be involved. I think that they were stopped from being involved largely in the Selhurst days, but generally there was a great affiliation with the fans.
Right.
I never really saw a difference there.
Okay, moving on to the actual formation of the club. I remember you sitting at the table, that famous meeting where Chris Stewart made the speech, I just want to watch football on a Saturday, and you were sitting on the table there, and I talked to you for the first time after that. At that time, you were one of the instigators of the club. I think it was you, Mark Jones, Chris, maybe Trevor, were the main instigators. Did you then hold a vision that in your own head that it would be so many years and
Yeah.
how it would go?
Yeah, absolutely.
What was your vision?
Well, I think I need to just step back a little bit
Okay.
before. It was around November time that season that I actually had my first conversation with Chris Stewart about if this monstrosity thing happens with it going to Milton Keynes. I, for one, will want to start a new club.
Right.
Right, I'd rather do it with everybody else, but whatever happens, we'll start a new club.
Right.
And that was something that you know, and Chris, I can remember that Chris was a little bit shocked, but thought about. He's a very thoughtful person, Chris, and he thought about it and said, okay, well, we'll keep a watching brief on that. And then I met Trevor through various bits and pieces with the trust, and Trevor was had a good knowledge of non-league football, so I had a conversation with him about it. And Mark, I had heard, I'd been friends with Mark for years anyway, but we'd started to do some work professionally together and other bits and pieces. So I talked to him about it, and you know, the idea that we would start again, although was muttered by lots of different people, I think that they were the first real rumblings about what we'd actually do. And as the decision got closer and closer and closer, I'd become more determined and more focused on the fact that unfortunately there's a real chance we're going to lose this, and it's getting more and more and more real, and the closer the decision gets, there's no way back from this decision. If we're not ready on May the 28th 2002, then we're never going to be ready, because my opinion, and was that we needed to start the next season. There was no way. If we left it a season, I thought we'd be dead in the water.
And May the 28th was the deadline date for registering a new club, was it?
No. May the 28th was the day of the decision.
Sorry.
That it was going to be published,
Okay,
the decision.
yeah.
Now, I actually genuinely think, and I can't prove this, and it's just my own speculation, that they'd pushed it that late. They'd left it that late, believing that we wouldn't have time to start up a new club, just in case there was some nutter out there that was all ready to go with a Wimbledon Town FC, or you know, they're not in the wider interests of football.
Yeah.
Thing in that report was damning to the FA, in my opinion, very damning. And they've never answered that, by the way. They've never turned around and said, actually, sorry, got that wrong, boys. I suppose it's not in their nature, but anyway. So as it got closer, I started to talk to Trevor, Chris, Lou Carlton Kelly, a few other people, that seriously, if this goes wrong, we'll go again. We have to. We can't just let the club go to Milton Keynes. We'll start another one. And I think several people thought we were bonkers, but other people came round to it quite quickly. And we're not talking about loads and loads of people here, but there were people who knew what we were talking about.
But there was a precedent with Enfield Town, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Different reasons, but they'd started, I think, a year or 2 years previously.
Yeah. There was, and it was a very different situation.
Yeah,
There,
I
other clubs
understand
still
that. Yeah.
existed as such, and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we particularly used that as a precedent. What we did do on, I got a phone call on May the 27th in the evening. My phone rang, and it was somebody that was in the know, seriously in the know, and could not be wrong, would not be wrong, wouldn't have said what they said unless it was true, and they told me that we'd lost. And which I have to say, by then, remarkably, I was half expecting, you know, for all the optimism that I have, I had a horrible feeling we were going to lose that, and we did. And lo and behold, it took me about a minute to turn around and say, right, that's it. So I made a couple of phone calls, and I said to Trevor, I'm not going to Soho Square tomorrow, because my natural instinct was to go up there and smash the FA to pieces. The same as lots of people, there were eggs thrown and people broke into the building and so on. I think if I'd have gone into the building, I might have done something a little bit more than some of the others did. I was very angry. So I said, no, I'm not going to Soho Square tomorrow to hear that we've lost, because we've lost. I'm going into my office and I'm going to go in early, and you can come with, but by close of play tomorrow, we need to know what we need to do to launch a new club. And that means we need to be speaking to people and making arrangements. Trevor said, okay. I spoke to Mark and I said, look, up to you. I know you probably feel like going to Soho Square, but I'm not going. Come in. He said, right, I'll come into the office. I spoke to Chris, and Chris had to go to Soho Square, which was fair enough. So off he went there. We went to the office, and lo and behold, the decision came out, and all the wailing and screaming started, and the demonstrations up there started. We just got stuck in, really. We got in touch with the London FA. We got in touch with all sorts of people. We were speaking to Terry Eames. We were just asking the Ryman League. We were in touch with all of these things, and by the end of that day, we had a blueprint of what we needed to do. We needed to basically register a new club to get senior status. I think we got Niall Cooper to go to the London FA's headquarters in Lewisham, pick up the form and bring it to us the next day. He lived not far from there, and the day kind of ended with me speaking to Chris and saying, "Listen, we're going to start a new club. I think it will be much stronger with you on board, and I really hope that you'll do this. But what you need to do is walk through these doors at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. We've got an office here. We're ready to go. We know what we've got to do. We need you with us. And if you walk through those doors at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, then I'll know that we're on our way." And Chris was early. He was early the next morning, and that was when he walked through those doors, I knew that we were going to do it.
Yeah,
absolutely knew it, and the rest I think is relatively well documented. But it was bloody great fun and very hard work, but it was tremendous fun doing it.
And you must feel very proud of your role in that,
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, it was just it was a fantastic. It was a roller coaster that hasn't stopped.
Absolutely. So we're on the eve now. In a few days' time, we start our first season in the Conference National, home to Luton Town. What's your realistic expectations for next season?
Well, I think I've said it many times before. I don't believe in the word consolidation.
Excellent.
I know you feel the same. I believe that we should finish as high as we possibly can. I actually think that at some stage of the season we'll challenge for a playoff spot. I believe that if that's towards the end of the season, we stand a realistic chance of getting it. I think that it will be very difficult for us to get off to a good start, because the games...
Tough games.
Looks like a very, very tough start. But, if we start to swim quite quickly as opposed to sink quite quickly, you never know what's going to happen. I love the look of the team. I love the feel of the atmosphere within the team. The way Terry and Stuart and Simon have put this all together is phenomenal. And I would never want to put limits on the team. We could finish as, who knows, this is Wimbledon. It's not any other club. It's Wimbledon.
It's a great phrase. Who knows, this is Wimbledon, and we just don't know. And that's, for me, that's part of this incredible adventure that I've shared. 40 years like you have with this club. Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Ivor, we need to finish now.
Sure.
Many thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Cherry Red TV and AFC Wimbledon TV, and we'll see you again soon. There'll be more in this series. Thank you. Goodbye.